Following the African historical tragedy of slavery and colonization that brought ultimate division amongst groups, tribes, and regions, there can hardly be an African who will not buy Professor PLO Lumumba's manifesto for effective transformation of the African continent that would lead to uniformity in thought, decisions, and demands. The idea of African unity may sound lofty to many, but it has yet to be discovered and is worthy of consideration. It has been championed in many ways by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Sekou Toure of Guinea-Conakry, Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, Patrice Lumumba of Congo, and lately Gaddafi of Libya, for which he lost his life. Amongst these leaders, none achieved anything due to internal wranglings, colonial history, religious differences, language and cultural differences, selfish and individual nature of African man. And most importantly, African unity is an idea the world is entirely against. Every country benefiting or wanting to benefit from African riches wouldn't favor the idea. They may not say it but would do everything in the background to stop it. Because it wouldn't only make Africa strong and a potential contender in world leadership but will make Africa an immediate power broker, an aspect far from imaginable by Europeans, Asians, and the United States. Being against the idea of unity, Africans can hardly stop any country from doing so. What would stop Africa is Africans themselves, looking at the way regional blocs have operated and managed and their pitfalls. Primary problems that stand before African unity are the road network and communication. Many African countries need more internal connecting road networks linked to other countries. The same situation applies to communication networks. The lack of internet in many communities, the absence of electricity, and portable water do not favor the idea of African unity. It will make many countries immediately dependent on others. Due to colonial errors and mistakes, most African countries have border conflicts. African unity could be the best way to resolve disagreements and persistent disputes. Still, we need to remember bringing those bordering communities together and reshaping administrative jurisdiction may present a considerable problem. Many people may not see it as an issue, but language influences ideological differences. Unfortunately, Africa is home to various foreign international languages used principally for communication. How to navigate these languages to foster and propagate the idea of unity presents a considerable problem because most Africans still need the education to think outside of the colonial perspective. Despite these pitfalls and shortcomings, it should be now if African unity needs fresh and deep consideration. The world is in turmoil. Russia, China, the United States, and her NATO ally are flexing muscles. In turn, French Africa has risen with a renewed determination to push the French and her Western partner out of their countries. The wave is on, and there can hardly be a time to heed the African unity call now. However, African unity is achievable through a revolutionary approach. First, they put together intellectual and dedicated personage no matter their profession and works of life to create a blueprint. More than half of the work concerning the blueprint has already been done through regional groups. The fundamental issue Africa faces is more than the inability to carve out a working blueprint but the willingness to implement and the character of those assigned to do the job. Denounce all colonial pacts and nationalize all resources. African unity is achievable once every African country is ready to say no to colonial agreements, whether old or recent. There's no single economic treaty that doesn't disfavor African countries. As radical as this may sound, a step in the right direction, African countries should cancel their membership in international organizations and fashion out conditional modalities for readmission. Until these conditions adhere to, they should say goodbye to organizations like the International Court of Justice, the Criminal Court, the World Health Organization, and all economic treaties imposed by the West and its ally. African unity is not achievable under the present colonial boundaries and delimitation dispensation. Visa-free implementation cannot operate effectively under the current colonial arrangements. The idea that an African needs a visa before entering another country is a tragedy to the African consciousness. and stands as an impediment to economic, social, and cultural development. Annul all foreign military bases. It's inconceivable that another country could establish its military base in another country when the latter cannot do the same. Disband all regional military bases and create or turn them into African military to train a unilateral military organization. There are several opinions as to what can constitute African unity. Nevertheless, if Africans are ready to heed Professor PLO Lumumba's call for unity, it cannot be what is obtainable with the present African Union. The African Union is no less than a paper tiger, armed-chair politicians with little to offer the changing world. Africa needs revolutionary change. And this is not achievable without the drastic implementation of the salient points highlighted above. Think about it.